Hello and welcome. I'm so excited because today we are talking about handwriting. And if you know me, I'm super old school and I love to handwrite. I'm so old school like that. I'm of the generation. Yes, we're with Holly Britton today from Squiggle Squad, and we're going to talk all about the handwriting things, which is so fun. So here's something really funny. I was of the generation, and Holly might remember this as well, where we actually wrote notes to each other in school. We wrote letters and notes, and that was something that we did just every day, every class period. We're writing notes to our friends, and we just, passing notes in class, but then also, in between class periods, you'd meet your friend in the hall, and then you'd switch, right? You'd have this whole conversation going throughout the day. We had lots and lots of practice handwriting, but our kids with the Chromebooks and everything, they don't get so much now. And so when we're talking about giving our kids handwriting skills and why that's important, I want to really cover that today because I love that Holly really focuses on the actual brain activity and how it affects our learning of just a lot of things, especially language acquisition. So I want to chat about that today. And then we're going to give you some amazing, very specific handwriting ideas and strategies and tips for young and old. Okay. Because we know that our kids got a little bit of handwriting. We did that when they were little. And then, especially sometimes with our homeschoolers, we're like, oh my gosh, their handwriting, right? I was an English teacher. I got a lot of creative handwriting when I was teaching high school. Okay. Let's just say that. But as the kids go, and I know some kids are intimidated because their handwriting's messy and they don't want to, or it takes too long. We're going to cover all that stuff. And if your kids are having a little like flipperoos on some letters and things, Holly's going to talk about that as well. She is amazing. First of all, Squiggle Squad is an amazing curriculum, and it really teaches you how to do things in the way that does the most effective skills, and then also so you don't have to backtrack later, which is really amazing. I love that. So, Holly, thanks for joining us today. I'm so excited to
So,
have you here
so
again.
again, I
Again,
know. I'm
yes.
honored. I'm
Yeah,
honored.
we've had Holly on before and we talked all about the brain activity and things like that. So if you are wanting a little backstory, a little bit more into the how it affects learnings part, we're going to touch on that a little bit today. But I want you to go back and listen to that episode if you're digging it, because I know Holly and I geek out on stuff like that. So we had a whole episode where we just couldn't stop talking about it. It was amazing. So
right.
we're going to just dig in more the practical today. But Holly, so awesome. I'm so glad to have you here. And can you just share with us a little bit again, just remind us of like why you're so passionate about handwriting?
Well, I was a homeschooler, and I had to teach my kids because I taught them from the very beginning, and I had to teach them how to handwrite. And fortunately, I had been taught how to handwrite, and more or less correctly, with a proper directionality and spacing and sizing of letters, whatnot. So it came fairly naturally to me to show my kids. And then later, when I went into classroom teaching and curriculum instruction, curriculum design and what was I? I was an administrator at a private school where I did the design of our whole curriculum structure, K-8. And when I went into that side of things, I started seeing this very weird disconnect between what the kids were expected to do in the way of writing, but had not been properly trained in. So they were met with a lot of frustration. Finally, I was teaching in public school in third, fourth, fifth grade class, and I was experiencing it as an upper elementary school teacher. What happens to my lesson plans when those kids don't have basic skill set? And for me specifically, I was seeing the biggest gap in their transcription skills. And that word just simply means the ability, and using various modalities, from taking what is inside your head and making it visible on paper. And sometimes we transcribe using a keyboard, But for the youngest kids, we are still teaching them to transcribe by hand. That means that handwriting and a pencil are learning tools that older teachers or teachers of older grades need to have. They need those kids to have that. And if they don't, they are stuck without a key tool for learning and communicating. So I became pretty passionate about it, maybe in part because it's so basic that it just kept throwing me for a loop. I kept walking by these kids in my brain. I was saying, this should be easy. This should be easy for you. I'm not asking anything. I'm asking below grade level stuff, and you can't do it. And my heart broke for those kids because they were willing. They were very capable kids and willing to learn. They weren't even, I'm hearing a lot about apathy these days, but back right before COVID, I wasn't getting that in class. Kids still cared, and yet they didn't have a key learning tool that I needed them to have.
Absolutely. That's so important. And I know we talked last time about the learning aspect of it and how in their language acquisition, especially when they're younger, and that brain activity and that cognitive thinking of just getting something out, like your thoughts, right? So that's what you're talking about. And so what do when our kids are not handwriting well, what just briefly to recap a little bit of what we talked about before, what cognitively is happening to them in their ability to learn?
Well, first of all, they're probably immensely frustrated with the
Ugh.
learning process
So
because
love of learning drops, right? Yeah.
the love of learning is, boy, they're just surviving. They're
Right.
just surviving. So to get them to actually thrive, we need to really dig down into what that kiddo's problem is and sort of diagnose, pull it all apart, because I'm sure your listeners are aware of the idea of working memory. So we have this piece of the brain that is open and ready to take on a task, and the most basic skills, um, uh, they handle it depending on what it has already been stuck in long term through the automatization process. And if it hasn't been oh wow, whew.
Automated.
It hasn't
Yeah.
been made automatic through repetition and frequent use,
Mhm.
it's going to be processed in this working memory area, and the working memory is very limited. It can only take a few things at a time, and there are things that are very easy that you learn as basic skills in your younger years. Like, and for reading, I'll give as an example, reading, we learn the phonetics of the letters and letter teams, but once we're reading, we don't go back to that. We don't have to sound out every word anymore.
Mm.
You have to start with that. And if you don't start with that, you are going to frustrate that student later. But once you practice that and they get it back there in long-term memory, then that doesn't gum up the working memory anymore. That's freed up then to do the harder, higher level learning tasks that we're asking of the kids. So with handwriting, if you are asking them to answer some sort of writing prompt, and their working memory is focusing more on the mechanics of physically getting it down, or the other part of transcription is the spelling piece of it. If that is the hard part, then doing the thinking through maybe the creative writing process, or quality vocabulary you're trying to work, or maybe best syntax, or the way that you phrase your sentences, those higher level writing tasks can't be tended to if they are tending first to how in the world they're going to get it down on paper. I saw this time and time and time again when I was in the classroom.
Yeah, this is
So,
such a good point. I mean, there's so many kids that our kids say, well, I can't think of anything to write. I can't, when they're being asked to write something. I saw this so much with my nephew, and I just don't know what to write. They're giving an assignment and they're asked to come up with an idea. And before they can come up with the idea, they have to they get stuck sometimes well, I have to write it, so I have to remember all these things, the parts, the mechanics, like you said, and then we get stuck in this we can't get it out, and then they get frustrated and they don't
and
want to do it
then
anymore.
And then what often teachers and sometimes parents do is they give them a workaround. They say, "Oh, it's really hard for you, so let's do speech to text. So we're just going to have them
Mm,
talk into it." And as a support to learning how to write, that's not a bad start. But when you use it as a replacement for writing, then you
mhm.
will never teach them writing. They will never understand what it means to actually formulate their thoughts into a clear message that they put on paper, so that readers who are not even listening to them, not even maybe even in the same time, you put something down on paper, it can be read for after you die. But
Right.
if you are not learning how to do that, then you are not leaving a written record of your thought process. And then, and moreover, and I think this is really important for parents teaching their kids, is we are not just teaching them knowledge, we are brain training them. We are giving them brain thinking skill, and handwriting is a tool for giving them thinking skills. And so when you don't
100%. Yeah.
require it, when you don't teach them how to do it, you're actually taking away a mode, a way of processing our thoughts, a way of thinking through, and maybe when they get to be adults, they never write again. They will, but they won't if you don't teach them how to do it. But they will use handwriting for the rest of their life. But let's say, for argument's sake, that they turn 18 to go to college and they just, I don't know, talk into a computer the rest of their life. You have still done them a service for training their brain by having them write by hand while they're in your care, while you are teaching them. You are training their brain, and handwriting is a fantastic, a very, very unique way of teaching.
Yeah, and I think I'm so glad that you talked about that, because there's a brain hand coordination, like your eyes, it's a visual thing. You're thinking as you're writing, and when
Yes,
you're writing, it's not a process of uh I I should say it takes more brain capacity and more brain usage to handwrite than it does to type. And
yes.
so that makes our kids ability to think through what they're saying. I remember writing, this is how old I am. I remember writing my essays for school, or my papers and stuff for school, and I always hand wrote them because that's just what we did. We didn't have like the computers to do it on. We'd go to school and we'd type them in the computer lab, right?
Right.
But then my so old. So then
Oh,
by the time computers were like personal computers were a thing, my dad said, "You're going to have to get used to writing it on the computer." And I was like, "That's so dumb. How am I going to know?" I want to get my thoughts out, right? And then I would rewrite it to edit and things like that, because that's how we
wow.
do, instead of
Wow.
editing as we go when we're on the computer. And also, hey, man, when the electronic apocalypse comes around, we need a pen and a pencil for sure. But it's gonna happen. I told my son it's gonna happen at some point.
Well, I think AI coming around is creating more and more need for teachers to have kids writing by hand.
Oh,
We're
100%.
hearing from professors across all, I mean, nations, and
Yeah.
certainly the US, saying we have got to go back to blue books and in-class essays because I can't
Blue
trust that they
books.
aren't using AI. And I'm thinking, we're not going backwards. We're actually moving forward. by getting kids to use pencil and paper or pen and paper.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And for those of you that are too young to know what a blue book is, it was just paper, lined by like paper that was like stapled into a book that had like a blue paper cover, and you'd bring that to do your finals and your midterm essays and stuff. Anywho, for those of you that are younger, it was a thing. It was a thing. You had to buy them. You had to buy them from the store. But anyways, so I want to get into some details today. I want a majority of us to get it today to be talking about logistics and
Okay.
the things for parents to do. So
Yeah.
when we're thinking about our kids being ready for the for writing, I talk a lot about like the hand structure, the fine motor skills, like those kinds of things, like the ability. How do we know? Plus the thinking ability. How do we know what are the signs that our child is ready for writing?
Well, let's define some terms first. First of all, I just really want your audience to know that when I refer to handwriting, I'm not referring to cursive. I am referring to the act of writing by hand using a writing implement on paper. That's just generally speaking, when I'm talking, that's what I'm talking about. When we say writing, very often, even in literacy discussions with researchers, curriculum writers, whatever, when we say writing, they are very often referring to the cognitive processes happening as you put
Yes.
as your word processing right through your brain, and that has more to do with the cognitive side of it. When I speak about handwriting, I'm speaking about two major components of the writing process now married. So that would be the mechanical side
Mm-hmm.
of getting words out, making, I like to say, making the invisible visible. So
Hmm.
whatever that takes. And we're talking about language processing. So you can't write by hand if you don't know your letters, if you don't know your how to spell words. You cannot just start handwriting. So when you go way back then to preschool, when they are learning both, they're learning the coordination, the strength, the dexterity, the visuospatial skills, the eye-hand coordination. They're learning all of the physical aspects of growing and developing needed for handwriting, and they're learning the language side of it. So they're learning that you open a book and you read left to right. They're learning that those little squiggles they see on paper might have something to do with the words that are coming out of the mouth that is reading to them. Even if they don't understand what that means, they are starting to develop patterns of thinking and starting to recognize words in print that will begin to make sense to them slowly over a couple years. Everything you do as a parent with those kids on your lap reading books is going into handwriting instruction. You
I
just
love
don't
it.
know
Yes.
that. And everything that you do with a parent and those kids out on the playground is going into handwriting instruction. They are strengthening their hands when they grasp a bar. When they're climbing a ladder. They are creating core body strength to sit up at a table when they're balancing on a curb or a balance beam. They are they're getting dexterity in their fingers when they pick up and grasp a ball and throw it. Those are all handwriting instruction without putting the physical with the letter writing yet. As they get a little bit older, and now you start introducing, say, the names of letters. So they see a letter and you say, that's a B, B, B. You start helping them make connection between what they're seeing and what they're hearing. Writing that, you can see as we go up this progression that it's actually further along on that progression spectrum because it's more complicated. We're starting to layer more and more expectations of these kids, and we don't want to layer those too hard too fast for fear of frustrating them, because can actually be a really fun process if you don't overdo it too much too soon. So you have in the back of your mind as a teacher, parent, that we're working towards this, but they don't know that, and they don't need to know that. We're just going to massage this into their being and let them enjoy the process as we go. You don't have to tell them they're developing hand strength while they're doing the monkey bars. Just develop the hand strength, and I mean, some kids are more curious than others as to why they're doing what they're doing. That's fine. Address that as it comes, but keep it playful. This should be playful. That's how kids learn. And when they start to feel stress or pressed to do something that they can't do, then you risk shutdown. And we don't want shutdown. We want them to love it. We want to see their little eyeballs, light up, and
Absolutely.
and,
Yeah.
and that come across their face, that joy come across their face. So how you tell whether or not they're ready to actually start writing, and this is where I went into the definition of writing.
Mhm.
We're going to say, how do we know when they're ready to start making letters on paper?
Mhm.
And a lot comes before that. A lot of scribbling, a lot of fist holding, like they hold their whatever they're writing with their fist. All of that is prep for handwriting. Don't correct them, not when they're 2 and 3 years old. There's no, let them play. They're discovering other things about writing. They're discovering cause and effect. Like, what happens when I put this color on, and then I put my paintbrush in another color, and I put that color on, and that's all cause and effect. They are discovering. They're trying to reach understandings and new meanings. They're trying to experience so that they can, we're constantly seeking understanding and meaning. So that's what they're doing. And it may not have anything to do with the alphabet yet, but it does have a lot to do with handwriting and the joy of making things on paper, which is so fun.
So good. So good. I love it. And yeah, there's so many different activities that are involved in the preparatory experience of that and really building them up. And usually curriculums have you starting with like one lines or like small movements, one or another. I know that one of the things that our parents ask a lot about is grip, right? So how do we start to teach that grip, or what do some parents like to just whatever, however they hold it, however they hold it. And I was really specific about it, how I taught my son. I was very conscious about that, and I think I was a little over the top about it, to be honest. And so that made it harder for him, and so I think that there's a balance there, but what is that balance?
Okay, you ready? Here we
I'm
go.
ready.
A lot of times people think that, oftentimes parents and even teachers don't know why we teach them to hold it a certain way. Like, what's the big deal? If they can make a letter and they can hold it however they want, why should we even care? It looks fine. We're good. The reason is because we want to set our kids up for healthy writing habits so that they don't create repetitive use issues later in life. 2, as teachers, I'm speaking for teachers now and for future older grade teacher parents. If you're going to use this as a tool for learning, they need to be as comfortable as possible. It means we don't want their hand to hurt. We don't want to be giving them any kind of tendon damage. And we want them to be dexterous enough that their handwriting can become neat and legible. It doesn't have to be gorgeous. It doesn't have to be a work of art, but it does have to be legible if we want to communicate with the people we're writing for. So we do that early on because we are training the kids. If we leave everything up to the kids to figure out, they are naturally not going to come up with the best way of doing that. And we know this because handwriting, language in print is a human construct. We didn't evolve into doing it. We made it up. It's not born in us. It's not innate. We made it up, which means we have to teach it to the next generation. And generation after generation after generation, thankfully, has come up with the most comfortable, best ways to do it. And that's what we want to give our kids. So I love the adage. I think it's an old Chinese proverb, though I haven't been able to find the beginning of the origins of it. They say, know the rules, master the rules, break the rules.
For
Good
sure.
artists, good musicians do this. They do things structured at the beginning because there is a good, right, and healthy way to do it. And then later, when they can go out on their own, they have all the freedom in the world to change it up. But if instead you let them do what they want the way they want it, they could inadvertently be limiting their potential for growth because we haven't given them the best setup. The best setup is going to be our tripod or quadrupod. And when that happens is well after this grip right here is called the palmar grip. It is a primitive reflex that kids are born with. And we know this because as mommies, when we're holding our kid, they grab our hair and they pull, and they're not doing it because they chose to pull our hair. They're doing it because they're born with that grip. As they get older, they crawl, they play on the playground. The pressure and sensory experience that they get through the palm of their hand and the tips of their fingers help them open up their palm. That's what we want to see happening when we start putting things in their hands. If they grab a crayon or a paintbrush and they automatically do this, it's not because you haven't taught them how to hold their pencil right.
Yeah.
It's because nature made them born like this. So don't hurry that. I will say this, as they get old enough, they start to develop and that starts to open and they start to hold a pencil, you can actually show them, and more times than not, they can do it without a whole lot of fuss. You will sometimes get the complicated, kiddo that maybe is taking a while to get out of that primitive reflex, or maybe has some other neurological things going on that need more time or more sensory input, or that's totally understandable. But I like to do the tripod, and I'll tell you why. I used to say, I grew up on the quad. I always did this growing up, but I now do this and I teach this. And the reason is because I'm seeing this so much.
Oh, interesting.
And if you see it, I'm sitting on that third finger, that index finger, for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm grasping the pencil using the quadrupod, which is the pinching with two fingers, a middle finger and an index finger, and the thumb on the other side, and resting on that third ring finger. That I'm seeing more and more people, including adults, that are holding it like this and then using that to wrap their thumb and do sort of a modified grip, like
grasp.
What do we call that? A fist grasp.
Yeah, fist. Yeah.
So what happens here, and for those of you who can see,
they scrunch it.
They scrunch it, and look, I have no movement in my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
If I hold like this, look at all the movement I have in my fingers.
Yeah, that's what I really wanted to teach my son. That's what I was like, if you are holding it if you're holding, your fingers should be doing the moving, not so much your hand. So
you will end up moving everything.
Of course, yeah.
You'll move your elbow, your wrist, your forearm, but you will not move your fingers. If you're holding it like this, this is all wrist. This is all wrist. And that's what I was talking about earlier for longevity, hand cramping, and even things like, carpal tunnel syndrome. And what ends up happening is you give up writing as often because it hurts you. So now you don't have it at your disposal as much as you'd like.
Absolutely. I think that's fascinating and such a good point. Yeah. So if it's so tight, and that's why my son did that too. He's holding it so tight, even though he's holding a tripod, it was like oh my gosh, the grip. And it was making it difficult for him to
Interesting.
actually use the fine muscles in those fingers to be able to move it gently around. I don't know whether he felt like he had to press hard. I don't know, but he presses so hard and he holds it so tight. And I see a lot of kids doing that in the classroom too. But if our kids, so I'm thinking about that our kids are older now and they have the messy handwriting, or they have something where they don't want to write because even my son says, he just said this to me the other day. He says, it would be faster if I just type it. And I was like, well, it's not always about fastness. This
Yes.
is this is not always about fastness. This is something that has to do with a legitimate like thinking skill that we have. How do we build in, with all of everything being so online, so typing, how do we build in handwriting things for kids that are resistant to handwriting?
Whew, there's a lot in that. So a desire to go fast is not always a handwriting problem.
Yes.
Desire to go fast has a lot to do with our attention deficit these days. You know, our scrolling stuff, the fact that when kids are on screens now, they're getting like instantaneous blips. Something stays on the screen for 3 seconds. We don't even, when we're watching a TV show, we don't even get to look at a person's face anymore. It's on and off, on and off. And it is that alone is training the brain to think differently. We listen to podcasts on 1.25 now, or 1.5, or sometimes
Right.
right. So our brains we are training our brains to want to move fast. But for you homeschoolers who are really training the brain of your kiddos, handwriting is another good way to actually give our brains some slow down time.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you can it's not always fastness.
It's not always about fastness.
I like your word. It's not always fastness, but they actually don't know the benefits of slowing down their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't experience it very often. So if as teachers, we can show them the benefit of that, and we might have to scaffold it a little bit. We might have to not say, hey, I want you to write a whole essay by hand, but we might say, I want you to write a really rich, high quality sentence based on the paragraph you just read. And then we work through our sentences. We work through, I'm going to disappear for a minute, but I'm listening to you. I have to plug in my computer. It's going to zip out on us. Yeah,
No
so
worries, no worries. One of the things that I did with my son, and I still do, is because he does a lot with he's writing a book, and that's on the computer, and he's writing all these things all the time, and he's got coding he's doing, and so we really try to limit what kind of screen time he has. But I also build in things that have to be handwritten, and that is
yeah,
just a have to, like it's
great.
non-negotiable. You need to taking, annotating books. When he's reading a book, he's annotating it
Great.
by hand with a pen. When
Wonderful.
he is doing he writes the shopping, I ask him to write the shopping list or something, and that's something for your littles to do too. They can totally do that when they can learn to spell. And let's just write you write the shopping list, I'll tell you what to write, right? So that's a
Perfect.
fun activity
Perfect.
that you do together. And then for your older kids, some things like taking notes on a lecture, or on something, on a class that they're doing, or when we go to a field trip, or going outside and taking field notes, right, on birds or leaves or trees or whatever they're seeing. That is building in handwriting exercises that they can do, that are not so big as like, okay, you're going to write this whole essay by hand, although I
Perfect.
do think that's a valuable skill. But however, that is, I know they probably don't do that anymore, but I had to do that for a teaching job interview. But anyway, a couple of them actually. But the handwriting an essay for sure, like just impromptu. But anywho, they will come across some of that stuff sometimes. You're not always going to have an iPad in your hand. So that
Right.
is something that's important for kids to know. And I think if we build in those little tiny activities, that they are forced to do it by hand, where you get like a journal or something that's not typable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as your kids get older, their schedules. My son and I have a schedule planner that's like actual paper in a bound book, and he has to write in there. So
I love it. Well, let me address too then. Um, something that I get a lot from parents, especially, is when they're required to write. The kids don't like it, not just because it hurts their hands or they don't want to go slow, but they actually have not been taught letter formation that leads to flowing, fluent handwriting.
Mhm.
And so if your kids are writing bottom to top, or they are the A, let's say lowercase a, if everybody can picture in their head for just a minute, if you have a pencil, pick it up. Lowercase a starts just below the line, pushes up and around, comes up and does a vertical line down. No pencil lift, counterclockwise circle, and a vertical line top to bottom. If they're doing a backward circle and pushing down and finishing, at a weird spot, or they're doing a backward circle, lifting up their pencil and putting it down, that alone, if you compound that with words and sentences and paragraphs, you can see how that would really make your handwriting stilted and slow and somewhat laborious. So if handwriting is not easy for your kiddo because they have these weird formation habits, one thing to consider, if you haven't already done it, is moving to cursive.
I
And
love it.
that means backing up to the mechanics of letter directionality. And for older kids who don't want to feel, like they're going back to kindergarten, cursive is a very adult way of writing, and it reverses your reversals. So it puts you back on the right track for that flowy thing. And then if we go back to what I said earlier, that adage, know the rules, master the rules, break the rules. A lot of people, once they've learned print and then they learn cursive, then they find their own style where they can write fast and comfortably. And it's usually a hybrid of both. And
Yeah,
as long
mine
as
is.
mine is, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with, as long as it's legible, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I don't have gorgeous handwriting. I have legible handwriting and I have useful handwriting, but I don't have beautiful handwriting. And it doesn't have to be beautiful as long as it is useful to you.
Absolutely. I love this so much, so much. This is a great conversation. And I have to just put in a little quip. My grandmother on my dad's side was a second grade teacher or first grade teacher, and she would make my dad do he would have the binder paper, and she would have to do small circles that touched the top and the bottom without lifting your pen the entire row all the way, perfect circles. And I have
Yep.
to say, I can't even imagine for doing that. I mean, I can, but he has the most beautiful handwriting.
It's true.
It's amazing.
That was standard practice. That
Right.
was standard practice in all grades. Like, they didn't give up. And after kindergarten, these days people are like, oh, we taught them handwriting back in preschool. I'm like, you can't teach handwriting in preschool. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can start them, but handwriting is taught over years. You're learning how to, yeah, when you move from directionality of a single letter, then you move into spacing in a word.
Oh, so
Then you
true.
learn into spacing between words. And
Mhm.
all the while, you're working on sitting a longer and longer string of letters on a baseline so that you have some sort of, straight writing. And then you work on speed. And
Mhm.
speed takes many, many years of practice to get to that
Takes
place.
writing letters to your friends in class.
Yeah, see? So important.
It is so important. Oh my gosh, this is such a great conversation. I can't believe we're like way over time, but it's so fascinating. It's so
Oh, are we
fascinating. And I
really? Oh
don't
my
mind at
goodness.
all. It's totally fine because this is so important. And I think that our parents have a lot of questions about this. So if you do, just please feel free to reach out to Holly. Holly, where can we find you?
You can find me at squigglesquad.com. You can reach me personally at holly@squigglesquad.com. And of course, you can always contact Cami and find me.
Absolutely. You know where to reach me. So make sure that you, also, by the way, we have her contact info in the show notes, in the description on YouTube. podcast, wherever you're listening, watching this, you're going to be able to contact her. And check out Squiggle Squad. It's such a really fun. I mean, how cute is Squiggle Squad? They're little 5 little animal guys, and they just, oh my gosh, I love it. So make sure you reach out to Holly and just check out Squiggle Squad. And then also just think about how your kid is ready or what's happening, or if you need to go back and do it again. I'm thinking I need to have, can you do some more some more cursive, because we need to go back there again.
He's gonna hate me.
I know. You know, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. So, anyways, this is a great conversation. I appreciate so much. If you like this, if you resonated with this conversation, please like, follow, and share and subscribe everywhere, wherever you're watching this. And if you leave us a little review on Apple Podcasts, just DM me a screenshot of it, and I will send you a free guide to help increase love of learning. So please be with us next week. Thank you, Holly, so much for sharing with us today again. And you're going to see more of Holly because she is amazing. And I will talk to you guys again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.